My name is Garrett, and at 34 years old, I never imagined my own parents would serve me legal papers over the farmhouse my grandparents left me. The property had been in our family for generations, and my grandparents wanted me to have it. But apparently my parents had other ideas. That morning when I opened the door to find a process server holding documents, my world tilted. The ultimatum was clear: give the house to my sister Madison, or face a court battle. Before I tell you how I turned this family betrayal into the most satisfying victory of my life, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if family drama gets your blood pumping too. Growing up, the farmhouse was my sanctuary. While my parents Richard and Diane chased their careers in the city, I spent every summer with my grandparents Jacob and Eleanor. Those warm months shaped who I became. My grandfather taught me how to fix anything with just a few tools and patience. My grandmother showed me how to cook meals that could feed an army and make everyone feel special while doing it. The contrast between my time at the farm and life with my parents couldn't have been starker. In my parents' sleek downtown apartment, conversations revolved around performance metrics and networking events. At the farm, we talked about the weather, the crops, and stories from when my dad was a boy. My grandparents never measured my worth by grades or achievements. They simply valued my presence and effort. A farm grows more than just crops, my grandfather would say as we worked side by side. It grows character. Every summer, I learned something new. By 12, I could drive the tractor. By 15, I could repair irrigation systems. By 18, I understood crop rotation and soil management. College took me away, but I always returned during breaks, helping with whatever needed doing. My parents never understood this connection. You could be interning at firms that would set up your future, my father would argue. Instead, you're wasting time playing farmer. They didn't see that I was building something more valuable than a resume. I was building a relationship with my grandparents and learning skills no university could teach. After college, I reluctantly followed the path my parents wanted. I took a job in technology, moved to Seattle, and started building my career. For 6 years, I visited the farm less frequently, limited by vacation days and project deadlines. I started dating Allison, who understood my work schedule, but couldn't comprehend my attachment to rural life. Then came the call that changed everything. My grandfather had suffered a stroke. Without hesitation, I took emergency leave and flew home. I found the farm in disrepair. My grandfather, once robust and energetic, was bedridden. My grandmother, trying to maintain everything alone, was exhausted. Their neighbors helped when they could, but it wasn't enough. I need to stay and help. I told my boss over the phone, "We need you back here, Garrett. The project deadline is approaching. I understand, but my grandparents need me more." That decision cost me my job. It also ended my relationship with Allison, who couldn't understand why I would throw away everything for old people who would eventually die anyway. Her words made the breakup easier than it might have been. For the next year, I split my time between caring for my grandparents and restoring the farm. I used my savings to hire help when needed and learn new skills to tackle problems myself. My grandmother's eyes would light up, seeing repairs completed that had been neglected for years. My grandfather, though limited in speech, would squeeze my hand when I told him about the improvements. Despite my efforts, my grandfather passed away that winter. My grandmother followed 6 months later. Both times my parents arrived for the funeral, expressed appropriate grief, and left quickly afterward. Madison came too, offering generic sympathy before returning to her life. The reading of my grandmother's will brought the first real conflict. The family gathered in attorney Benjamin Thompson's office, expecting a standard division of assets. What none of us anticipated was that my grandparents had revised their will 2 years prior. To our grandson Garrett, who has shown unwavering dedication to our home and way of life, we leave the farmhouse and surrounding 50 acres with the hope that he will continue the legacy we have built. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents exchanged glances. Madison stared at her hands. I sat stunned, overwhelmed by the responsibility and honor my grandparents had bestowed upon me. "There must be some mistake," my father finally said. "What about the rest of the family?" Attorney Thompson explained that smaller financial bequests were made to my parents and Madison, but the property itself was specifically left to me. The will was legally sound with 2 witnesses and a detailed explanation of their reasoning. That evening, as we gathered at a restaurant for an uncomfortable dinner, my father pulled me aside. "You know this isn't right," he said. "Your grandparents weren't thinking clearly toward the end." "They knew exactly what they were doing," I replied. "They wanted the farm to stay in the family with someone who cares about it." "We all care about family property," he insisted. "But decisions like this should be fair." I didn't argue further, but the seed of conflict had been planted. I moved into the farmhouse permanently and began executing my vision for its restoration. I would honor my grandparents by bringing the property back to its former glory and making it productive once again. The first sign of serious trouble came 3 months later. My parents began making weekly visits ostensibly to check in, but really to inspect the property and question my decisions. Madison would occasionally join them, making passive-aggressive comments about family fairness and how she could really use a place like this for her children. I tried to be accommodating, even inviting them to participate in the restoration. My father declined, saying his executive hands weren't made for manual labor. Madison complained about the dust and dirt. Only my mother occasionally helped, though her assistance came with constant suggestions about perhaps selling to developers since the land was worth a fortune now. I remained naive, believing that eventually they would accept my grandparents' wishes and we could heal as a family. I couldn't have been more wrong. Over the next 6 months, I poured everything into restoring the farm. Sunrise to sunset, I worked until my muscles ached and my hands blistered. The 100-year-old roof needed complete replacement, a job that cost me $20,000 in materials alone. I hired professionals for the specialized work, but did all the assistance labor myself to save money. The ancient plumbing system surrendered to modern updates after countless hours crawling under the house. The electrical wiring, dangerously outdated, required a complete overhaul. Each weekend brought new challenges, from repairing rotted floorboards to reinforcing structural beams weakened by time. Beyond the house itself, the land demanded equal attention. I cleared overgrown fields, repaired fences, and rehabilitated soil depleted by years of neglect. My savings dwindled as I invested in equipment, seeds, and supplies. By spring, I had established a small but promising organic vegetable operation focusing on heirloom varieties my grandmother had once grown. Local farmers, initially skeptical of the city boy playing farmer, gradually accepted me as they witnessed my commitment. Old Frank Henderson, whose property bordered ours to the north, became an invaluable mentor. Linda and Peter Johnson from the neighboring dairy farm brought me meals during particularly intense work periods. Slowly, I was building not just a farm, but a place in the community. The farm stand I opened on weekends began attracting regular customers from town. The extra income helped offset ongoing expenses, and I took pride in selling produce grown through my own labor. I was exhausted, but fulfilled, feeling my grandparents' approval in every small victory. Then came the day that changed everything. My parents' silver luxury SUV pulled into the driveway, unannounced Madison in the back seat. I wiped sweat from my forehead and greeted them with genuine warmth, hopeful this visit might be different. "The place is looking better," my father admitted, reluctantly surveying the freshly painted exterior and manicured lawn. "Thanks. It has been a lot of work, but worth it." Madison circled the vegetable garden designer boots, incongruous against the rich soil. Quaint, she offered, though her tone suggested otherwise. My mother suggested dinner, and I happily agreed, washing up before preparing a meal using vegetables harvested that morning. Throughout dinner, conversation remained superficial, until my father cleared his throat. "We wanted to discuss something important with you, Garrett. A family meeting, if you will." My stomach tightened. "What about the future of this property?" my mother interjected smoothly. "We have been thinking about what would be best for everyone." My father leaned forward. "Your grandparents meant well, but their decision has created an imbalance in the family. Madison has children to consider. Your career is still undefined after leaving your position. We believe the sensible solution would be to sell the property and divide the proceeds equally." I set down my fork. That isn't what Grandma and Grandpa wanted. They specifically left the farm to me to maintain, not to sell. They were elderly and not thinking practically, my mother argued. This property is worth over $1 million now, with the development happening nearby. That money could secure everyone's future. I am not interested in selling, I stated firmly. I have invested everything into restoring this place, and it is beginning to thrive again. Madison suddenly spoke up, tears welling in her eyes. That is so selfish, Garrett. You know I need security right now. The kids need stability. This was news to me. What do you mean? I did not want to tell everyone this way. She sniffled dramatically, but Derek and I are getting divorced. He has been having an affair with his assistant for months. I need somewhere to go somewhere for the children. My parents exchanged satisfied glances at this revelation, clearly having orchestrated the emotional ambush. The farmhouse would be perfect for them, my mother pressed. You are just one person. Madison has the children to consider. I am sorry about your marriage, I said sincerely to Madison, but that does not change my position. This farm is not for sale, and I am not giving it up. I will help you financially if I can, but not with this property. My father's face hardened. You always were stubborn, just like them. You were always the favorite, my mother added bitterly. Jacob and Eleanor doted on you while barely acknowledging Madison's achievements. Madison's tears flowed freely now. I need this, Garrett. I have nowhere else to go. You have a successful career and parents with multiple properties, I reminded her. You have options. I have put everything I have into this place. My father stood abruptly. Think about it, Garrett. Think very carefully about what this stubbornness might cost you. Families should support each other, not hoard assets. Or else? What I asked, anger rising, despite my efforts to remain calm. Or else we will have to explore other options, he replied ominously. Legal options. After they left, I sat alone at the kitchen table, where my grandmother had served countless meals, trying to process what had just happened. The implied threat hung in the air, but surely they wouldn't actually take legal action against their own son, over property that was legally, morally, and intentionally left to me. That night's sleep eluded me. I paced the creaking floorboards, torn between family loyalty and honoring my grandparents' wishes. By morning, I had convinced myself that cooler heads would prevail. My parents had been emotional. Madison's divorce announcement had heightened tensions. Given time, we would find a compromise that respected everyone's needs. I was wrong. So very wrong. The knock came 3 weeks later, early on a Tuesday morning, as I prepared to head into the fields. Opening the door, I found a stranger in a crisp button-down shirt holding an envelope. Garrett Thompson, he asked formally. Yes, that is me. You have been served. He thrust the envelope into my hands and walked briskly back to his car. Inside the kitchen, I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The legal language was dense, but the substance was clear. My parents were suing to invalidate my grandparents' will, claiming they had been unduly influenced and were not of sound mind when making their final arrangements. They demanded the court overturn the bequest and redistribute the property equitably among all family members. Attached was a personal letter from my father. This could all go away if you simply agree to sign over the property to Madison. Consider this carefully before forcing a public and expensive legal battle. I sat stunned, the papers scattered across the table. This wasn't an empty threat or negotiating tactic. They had actually filed a lawsuit against their own son. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. What hurt most was discovering this had been planned for months. The filing included affidavits from my parents' friends, claiming my grandparents had expressed confusion about their assets in their final years. There were even statements from distant relatives I barely knew all, suggesting I had somehow manipulated two independent, strong-willed people into changing their will. That afternoon, I drove to town and walked into Benjamin Thompson's law office without an appointment. The attorney who had handled my grandparents' will looked up in surprise as I dropped the lawsuit papers on his desk. They are actually doing this, I said, voice tight with emotion. Benjamin reviewed the documents, his expression growing increasingly troubled. This is aggressive, but not entirely unexpected. Your parents visited me after the will reading to question its validity. I explained that your grandparents were absolutely competent and their wishes were clear, but they obviously found attorneys willing to pursue this anyway. Do they have a case? I asked. Benjamin leaned back in his chair. Their case is weak. I have detailed notes from my meetings with your grandparents. They were lucid and specific about their wishes. The will was properly executed with witnesses, who can testify to their mental capacity. So, I will win. Legally, you have the stronger position, he agreed. But you need to understand something, Garrett. Even a frivolous lawsuit can be expensive and emotionally draining. They know this. They are counting on it. They likely hope you will give in rather than endure a protracted legal battle. I will not give in, I stated firmly. Then prepare yourself. This could get ugly and expensive. Family lawsuits always do. That evening my phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Have you reconsidered your position? He asked without preamble. Have you reconsidered yours? I countered. This lawsuit is baseless. It can all go away, Garrett. Just sign the house over to Madison. She needs it more than you do. What she needs is parents who do not manipulate their children against each other. His tone hardened. You think you are so righteous. Your grandparents spoiled you and now you are just being selfish. Is that really how you see this? They left me the farm because I cared about it. I worked alongside them for years. I gave up my career to care for them when they needed me. Where were you then? We were building successful lives to provide for our family, he shouted. While you were playing farmer, I was ensuring Madison would have opportunities. And now you want to take what is legally mine and give it to her. That is not how inheritance works. We will see about that, he threatened. Our attorneys are confident. After hanging up, I stared at the wall, trying to process how my own parents could become such adversaries. The next day brought a formal letter from their attorney, an expensive firm from the city. The language was cold and threatening, concluding with the phrase, "That would change everything. The house is your sister's, or we will see you in court." That night was my lowest point. Sitting on the porch swing my grandfather had built, I questioned everything. Was I being selfish? Should I just give in to keep peace in the family? The farm was thriving under my care, but at what cost, if it destroyed what family I had left? As dawn broke, I found myself in the study, looking through old photo albums. There I was at 12, helping rebuild the barn roof. At 15, digging irrigation trenches in the summer heat. At 18, harvesting corn alongside my grandfather, despite having a sprained wrist from a college intramural game. Year after year, hundreds of photos documented my labor on this property. Labor I had freely given out of love and respect. Labor that had taught me everything from carpentry to crop management. Labor that if I had been paid even minimum wage, would amount to tens of thousands of dollars. Something shifted inside me. This wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. This was about recognizing the years of work I had invested, the relationship I had built, and the legacy I was continuing. If my parents wanted to talk money and fairness, perhaps we should calculate everything. I spent the morning researching and making calculations. By conservative estimates, I had worked over 10,000 hours on the farm since childhood. At even minimum wage plus overtime for the longer summer days, the value exceeded $200,000. Add in the recent renovations and improvements I had personally funded, and the total approached half the property's value. That afternoon, I returned to Benjamin Thompson's office with a new perspective and a stack of research. I want to file a countersuit, I announced. Benjamin raised his eyebrows. On what grounds? Unjust enrichment, unpaid labor, and promissory estoppel. I have documentation of the work I performed on this property for years, with the understanding that I was investing in my future here. I can prove my parents knew this and encouraged it while benefiting from free labor that maintained their inheritance. The attorney looked skeptical. That is an unusual approach. Look at these photos, these records. My grandparents kept meticulous farm journals noting who did what work each season. My name appears constantly. My parents rarely show up, except for brief holiday visits. Benjamin reviewed the materials thoughtfully. It is unconventional, but not without merit. The court might find the countersuit compelling, especially as a defense against their claims of unfairness. I want to prepare the countersuit, but hold off on filing immediately, I explained. Send them a copy first. Let them see what they are really facing if they push this. A negotiating tactic, Benjamin nodded. It might work, or it might escalate things further. I am done being the reasonable one, while they try to bully me, I said firmly. They started this legal battle. I intend to finish it. The next week, Benjamin sent copies of our prepared countersuit to my parents and their attorney. The document detailed years of unpaid labor, calculated the market value of my work, included before and after photos of improvements I had made, and demanded compensation if they insisted on challenging my inheritance. The trap was set. Now we would see if they would walk right into it. My father called within hours of receiving the countersuit draft. His voice trembled with rage as he demanded to know what the hell I thought I was doing. Defending myself, I answered calmly, "You attacked me legally. I am responding in kind. This is outrageous. You cannot sue your own parents for working on your grandparents' farm as a child. Apparently family can sue family. You established that precedent, not me. This is different and you know it," he shouted. "We are trying to ensure fairness." "No, you are trying to take something that legally belongs to me and give it to Madison. There is nothing fair about that. If you proceed with this countersuit, you will no longer be our son." He threatened, voice cold. "We will completely disown you." The words stung despite my anger. "That is your choice, just as fighting this lawsuit is mine. You will regret this, Garrett. When you have no family left, you will regret choosing property over people." After he hung up, I sat in silence, absorbing the weight of what was happening. My parents were willing to disown me over property. The revelation was painful, but clarifying. This had never been about fairness or family unity. It was about control and money. Within days, the family divide became even more apparent. Relatives began taking sides. To my surprise, my mother's sister Rachel called to express her support. "Your mother has always been jealous of what her parents gave you. Not the property, but the love and attention she confided. I never thought she would take it this far." My father's brother Thomas showed up at the farm, unannounced ostensibly, to talk some sense into me. But after seeing the improvements I had made and hearing my side of the story, his perspective shifted. "Your father always did have a blind spot when it came to Madison," he admitted, as we walked the property. "She could do no wrong in his eyes while you had to work twice as hard for half the recognition." The most painful aspect was how the conflict affected Madison's children. My niece Lily, 10, and nephew Jason, 8, had always enjoyed visiting the farm. Now they were caught in the middle of an adult battle they couldn't understand. Madison had apparently told them I was trying to make them homeless, a manipulation that made me furious. Family gatherings became battlegrounds or occurred in separate factions. Thanksgiving approached, and for the first time in my life, I had no family dinner to attend. Instead, I accepted an invitation from the Johnsons, the neighboring dairy farmers, who had become surrogate family during the conflict. As word spread through our small community, I was surprised by the support that materialized. People I barely knew stopped me in town to express their backing. Old-timers who had known my grandparents shared stories confirming their sound mind and clear intentions. The local hardware store owner started giving me a discount, calling it the "stand your ground rate." My parents, sensing their local disadvantage, tried a new tactic. An article appeared in the local paper about the Thompson family feud, with quotes from my parents about their concern for my mental well-being and heartbreak over family division. The piece portrayed me as an ungrateful son denying his sister needed security. After reading it, I drafted a careful response, which the paper published the following week. Without attacking my parents directly, I shared my commitment to continuing my grandparents' legacy, my extensive work, restoring the property, and my belief in honoring the clear wishes of those who built the farm. The community response was overwhelmingly supportive. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned something that explained my parents' aggressive approach. They had apparently been in talks with developers interested in the land. Given its location and size, the property could be worth 3 times its agricultural value if rezoned for housing. This had never been about Madison needing a home. It was about cashing in on land that had been in our family for generations. The legal battle intensified. My parents' attorneys filed motions to dismiss my countersuit, while demanding extensive documentation of my grandparents' mental state in their final years. Benjamin countered with our own motions and evidence gathering, including subpoenas for my parents' communications with developers. The emotional toll was significant. I began experiencing insomnia and anxiety. Some mornings I questioned whether any property was worth this level of family destruction. In my darkest moments, I considered giving up just to end the conflict. What kept me going were memories of my grandparents. I could almost hear my grandmother saying, "Stand your ground when you know you are right, but always leave room for reconciliation." My grandfather would have added, "A man without principles is no man at all." I channeled my stress into farm work. The physical labor provided both distraction and therapy. The business continued to grow with restaurants in town, now requesting my organic produce. Each small success felt like validation of my choice to fight. After months of legal maneuvering, the court finally set a date for our first preliminary hearing. As I marked the date on my calendar, a mixture of dread and determination washed over me. There would be no more delays or negotiations. We would face each other in court, family divided by greed and betrayal. The night before the hearing, I walked the property, touching trees my grandfather had planted, sitting on benches where my grandmother had shelled peas. This land wasn't just dirt and buildings. It was a living connection to the people who had shaped me. I would not surrender it without a fight. The morning of the preliminary hearing arrived with a summer thunderstorm that matched my turbulent emotions. I dressed in my only suit purchased years ago for my grandfather's funeral and drove through the downpour to the county courthouse. Benjamin met me on the steps, umbrella in hand. "Ready?" "As I will ever be," I replied, straightening my tie nervously. Inside the courthouse bustled with morning activity. We followed signs to courtroom C and pushed through heavy wooden doors. My parents and Madison were already seated at the plaintiff's table, alongside two attorneys in expensive suits. My father stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge my presence. My mother glanced over briefly, her expression unreadable, before turning away. Madison kept her head down, tissue clutched in her hand. "All rise," the bailiff announced as Judge Patricia Winters entered. A stern woman in her 60s, with silver hair and piercing eyes, she surveyed the room before taking her seat. "Thompson versus Thompson," she announced, reviewing the file. "Family disputes are always the most difficult cases in my courtroom. Before we proceed with formal arguments, I want to be clear that I strongly encourage families to resolve inheritance disputes outside of court whenever possible. Have the parties attempted mediation?" My parents' lead attorney, William Broderick, stood. "Your Honor, we have made numerous attempts to reach an amicable solution, but the defendant has been uncooperative." Benjamin rose. "With respect, Your Honor, my client has been open to fair discussion. What he cannot accept is the invalidation of his grandparents' clearly stated wishes in their legal will." Judge Winters nodded. "Let us proceed then. Counsel for the plaintiffs, please present your case." Broderick launched into a carefully crafted narrative portraying my grandparents as confused elderly people manipulated in their final years. He suggested I had taken advantage of their vulnerability to secure the property for myself, excluding my devoted sister and parents. Jacob and Eleanor Thompson were not of sound mind when they altered their will 2 years before their deaths, he claimed. Medical records showed Jacob Thompson was on medications that could affect decision-making. Eleanor Thompson was grief-stricken after her husband's passing when she confirmed these changes. The mischaracterization of my loving, sharp-minded grandparents made my blood boil. Benjamin placed a calming hand on my arm, silently reminding me to maintain composure. When Broderick finished, Benjamin took his turn. Rather than attacking my parents directly, he focused on establishing the clear mental competency of my grandparents and their deliberate choice. "Your Honor, we have brought Jacob and Eleanor Thompson's physician, Dr. Robert Garcia, to testify about their mental capacity." Dr. Garcia took the stand and confirmed that despite physical ailments, both my grandparents had remained mentally sharp until their final days. "In my 30 years of practice, I have seen many elderly patients experience cognitive decline," Dr. Garcia stated. "The Thompsons were not among them. They were informed, engaged, and perfectly capable of making complex decisions about their estate." Benjamin then presented my grandmother's journal entries discussing their decision. "We are leaving the farm to Garrett," she had written. "He alone among our family understands what this land means and has shown the commitment to preserve it. Richard has never appreciated his heritage, and Madison has never shown interest in anything but the potential financial value." Next came the evidence of my contributions. Benjamin displayed before and after photographs showing the property's transformation under my care. He presented detailed records of expenses I had covered personally. Most impactfully, he showed decades of documented work through photos, farm journals, and statements from neighboring farmers. The defendant has invested not just his inheritance, but his life in this property, Benjamin explained. From childhood through adulthood, he has contributed thousands of hours of labor that maintained and improved the asset that his parents and sister now seek to claim. Judge Winters studied the evidence with careful attention. And what about these claims of unpaid labor and unjust enrichment in the countersuit? Benjamin explained our position. If the plaintiffs insist the will should be invalidated and the property treated as a family asset to be divided equally, then my client's extraordinary contributions must also be quantified. By conservative estimates, the value of his unpaid labor and direct financial investments exceeds $400,000. Throughout our presentation, I watched my parents' expressions shift from confidence to concern. Madison repeatedly wiped tears, her performance less convincing each time. When Judge Winters called a recess to review the evidence in her chambers, tension filled the courtroom. In the hallway, I stepped aside to avoid immediate confrontation, but my father followed me. "You are making a spectacle of our family," he hissed. "Is that what you want?" "I did not start this," I reminded him. "You could end it by withdrawing your lawsuit and let you steal what should be shared. It was never yours to share. Grandma and Grandpa made their choice. The question is why you cannot respect it." He had no answer, just anger and wounded pride. As I turned to walk away, Madison approached tentatively. For a moment, I glimpsed the sister I had once been close to before ambition and competition had created distance between us. "The kids miss the farm," she said quietly. "They ask about you." "They are welcome anytime," I replied. "This fight is not with them." "I never wanted it to go this far," she admitted. "Mom and Dad just kept pushing." Before she could continue, my father called her back sharply. The brief moment of connection evaporated as she returned to their side. When court resumed, Judge Winters announced she would take the matter under advisement, but shared some preliminary thoughts. "Based on the evidence presented, I find the claims questioning the testator's mental capacity to be notably weak. The medical testimony and contemporaneous documentation strongly suggest Jacob and Eleanor Thompson knew exactly what they were doing when making their will." She continued, "Regarding the countersuit, while unconventional, the court cannot ignore the substantial evidence of the defendant's contributions to the property. If we are to evaluate fairness as the plaintiff's request, then all factors must be considered." Before adjourning, she scheduled a full evidentiary hearing for 30 days later, but strongly encouraged the parties to seek resolution before then. "Family wounds inflicted in court often never heal," she cautioned. "Consider carefully whether this battle is worth its cost." Outside the courthouse, I was surprised to find several local farmers in attendance, including Frank Henderson and the Johnsons. They had come to show support, forming a small but meaningful counterweight to my parents' attempt to isolate me. That evening, as I checked messages at home, there was a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. It was Robert Chambers, my parents' attorney, suggesting we discuss possibilities before the next hearing. His tone was notably less confident than during the court proceedings. Following Benjamin's advice, I did not return the call immediately. "Let them sweat," he counseled. "They saw how the judge responded to our evidence. Let that reality sink in." The following day brought another call, this time more urgent. "Mr. Thompson, I believe we may have a basis for resolving this matter amicably." Chambers said, his previous arrogance replaced with conciliatory politeness. Again, I let the pressure build, agreeing only to a meeting the following week at Benjamin's office. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset over fields my grandparents had tended, feeling for the first time that perhaps justice might prevail. The conference room in Benjamin's office felt too small for the tension it contained. My parents sat stiffly across the table, flanked by their attorneys. Madison sat slightly apart, eyes downcast. Benjamin and I faced them, a united front, despite being outnumbered. Robert Chambers cleared his throat. "We appreciate this opportunity to discuss resolution options," he began, his confident courtroom manner replaced by cautious diplomacy. "Recent developments suggest a protracted legal battle may not serve anyone's interests." Benjamin nodded. We agree that resolving this matter outside court would be preferable. Has your position changed since filing the lawsuit? Chambers glanced awkwardly at my father before continuing. There may have been some misunderstanding about certain aspects of the situation. Family matters are complex, and emotions sometimes cloud judgment. There was no misunderstanding, I interjected. Your client sued me to invalidate my grandparents' will and take property legally left to me. My father started to speak, but Chambers raised a hand to stop him. Perhaps we could focus on finding common ground, rather than rehashing grievances. Common ground requires acknowledging reality, Benjamin replied. My client has prepared extensive documentation of his contributions to the property. With that, Benjamin distributed copies of a report prepared by a forensic accountant. The document meticulously detailed every hour of labor I had contributed over 20 years, along with recent financial investments in the property. Each category of work had been assigned appropriate market rates, with supporting documentation from local contractors, verifying the valuations. As you can see, Benjamin explained, even using conservative estimates, Mr. Thompson has contributed labor and capital that nearly equals the inheritance value his parents claim should be shared. My parents' lawyers huddled, whispering urgently as they reviewed the numbers. My father's face flushed red as he flipped through pages of photographic evidence showing me performing various tasks around the farm through the years. Chambers attempted damage control. These calculations seem quite speculative. How can anyone accurately account for hours worked decades ago? Fortunately, my grandparents kept detailed farm journals, I explained. Every day of work was recorded, including who did what. Additionally, we have gathered affidavits from neighboring farmers who witnessed my consistent labor over the years. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across my father's face. This was not proceeding as he had expected. After another whispered conference, Chambers adopted a new approach. Even accepting some of these calculations, family relationships have intangible value that cannot be quantified. Perhaps we could discuss a partial accommodation of everyone's interests. Benjamin shook his head. My client's position remains unchanged. The will is valid, and the property belongs to him. If your clients insist on pursuing their lawsuit, we will file our countersuit immediately and proceed to full discovery, including depositions of all plaintiffs regarding their communications with developers about rezoning the property. My mother's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I met her gaze directly. I know about the meetings with Westbrook Development. I know this was never about Madison needing a home. It was about selling off land that has been in our family for generations. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My father finally spoke, asking to speak with me privately. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed, and we stepped into an empty office. For several seconds, he simply stared at me as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. We never thought you would fight this hard, he finally said. You never really knew me, I replied. Just like you never really knew Grandma and Grandpa. He paced the small room. This legal battle is becoming expensive. Very expensive. That was your choice, not mine. Your mother and I, he hesitated. We have financial concerns you do not know about. The market downturn affected our investments significantly. Madison's divorce has been costly to support. We saw the farm as a solution. The admission surprised me. My parents had always projected an image of financial success, so this was never about fairness or family legacy. It was about security, he insisted. Family security. Except you were willing to sacrifice my security for everyone else's, I pointed out. Before he could respond, the door opened, and Madison entered, tears streaming down her face. I cannot do this anymore, she declared. I never wanted the farm. I just needed help after Derek left. Her admission confirmed what I had suspected. They used your situation as leverage, I said gently. She nodded miserably. They convinced me you would never help unless forced, that you were selfish and would let me struggle. Did you ever consider just asking me directly? I asked. Mom and Dad said it would be humiliating for me to beg, she admitted. That as family, I should not have to ask for what should be shared. The manipulation was even more extensive than I had realized. My parents had not only attacked me legally, but had poisoned my relationship with my sister through lies and misdirection. When we returned to the conference room, the atmosphere had shifted. My parents' confident facade had crumbled, replaced by the uncomfortable reality of exposed motives and tactics. Benjamin took control of the meeting. "Here are our terms," he stated firmly. "The lawsuit will be withdrawn immediately with prejudice, meaning it cannot be refiled. My client will retain full ownership of the property as specified in the will. In exchange, he will not pursue the countersuit for unpaid labor and investments." Chambers looked to my parents for direction. My father nodded resignedly. Additionally, Benjamin continued, "We require a formal acknowledgement that Jacob and Eleanor Thompson were of sound mind when making their will and that their wishes are being honored." "That seems reasonable," Chambers conceded. As the attorneys drafted the settlement documents, Madison approached me again. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I should have talked to you directly, instead of letting them manipulate everything." "We have both been pawns in their game," I replied. "That stops now." The settlement signing was a somber affair. My parents' signatures were stiff and reluctant, their defeat evident in every movement. No apologies were offered, no reconciliation attempted. When the documents were complete, they left without looking back, wounded pride, preventing any gesture toward healing. Madison lingered uncertainty in her eyes. "Where do we go from here?" she asked. "I need time," I told her honestly. "This has been a betrayal on multiple levels. I cannot just pretend it never happened." "I understand," she nodded. "For what it is worth, I am truly sorry for my part in it." As I drove back to the farm alone, emotions battled within me. The legal victory felt hollow against the backdrop of family destruction. Had I won the property but lost something more valuable? That evening, checking my mail, I found a handwritten letter from Madison. She explained her perspective, more fully detailed how our parents had played us against each other for years, and expressed hope that someday we might rebuild our relationship. The sincerity offered a small seed of possibility amid the wreckage of family bonds. 1 year after the settlement, the farm had transformed even further. The new greenhouse allowed year-round production of specialty crops, doubling my income. Modern equipment purchased with a small business loan increased efficiency. The farmhouse gleamed with restored beauty, every room now functional and comfortable, while maintaining its historic character. The legal battle had left deep wounds that required their own kind of restoration. Weekly therapy sessions helped me process the betrayal and grief over family relationships damaged perhaps beyond repair. My parents maintained minimal contact, our interactions limited to brief formal exchanges at unavoidable family events. The wall between us remained built of their resentment and my lingering distrust. Madison and I had begun a cautious reconciliation. After months of tentative communication through letters and occasional calls, she visited with her children. Watching Lily and Jason run through the same fields where I had played as a child brought bittersweet joy. They deserved to know their heritage, regardless of adult conflicts. "The kids love it here," Madison said, as we sat on the porch. "Thank you for letting them visit, despite everything." "They are innocent in all this," I replied. Besides, Grandma and Grandpa would have wanted them to experience the farm. The relationship with my sister would never return to childhood innocence. But we were building something new, something tempered by hard lessons, but perhaps stronger for the testing. Beyond family, I found unexpected healing through community. The mentorship program I established for local youth, interested in sustainable agriculture, brought new energy to the property. Teenagers arrived after school to learn farming techniques, building skills and confidence, while connecting with the land. Watching them discover the satisfaction of growing food reminded me of my own early lessons with my grandfather. The farm became not just my home, but a community resource. The seasonal harvest festival I organized attracted visitors from surrounding counties. Monthly workshops on organic gardening and food preservation sold out consistently. What had begun as a personal inheritance had evolved into a gift I could share with others. Through this process, I gained deeper understanding of what my grandparents had really left me. The property itself was valuable, but the true inheritance was their values. The importance of integrity, hard work, and stewardship. The courage to stand firm when right, even when standing alone. The wisdom to know what matters beyond material worth. My parents had seen the farm as an asset to be liquidated, I recognized it as a legacy to be continued and expanded. The land now supported not just my livelihood but educational opportunities for others, preservation of agricultural traditions, and a gathering place for community events. This was what my grandparents had envisioned when making their decision. Personal growth came through unexpected channels. The betrayal forced me to establish boundaries I had previously avoided out of family loyalty. I learned that sometimes the most loving action is standing firm, rather than capitulating to unreasonable demands. The conflict revealed strengths I had not known I possessed: resilience, strategic thinking, and the courage to face conflict directly. My perspective on wealth and success transformed as well. True prosperity was not measured in bank accounts, but in purpose and connection. The farm produced modest financial returns compared to my former technology career, but provided immeasurable wealth in meaningful work, community respect, and the satisfaction of continuing a family tradition. 6 months after the settlement, I established a memorial garden dedicated to my grandparents. The peaceful space featured their favorite flowers, vegetables, and a small pond reflecting the sky. A handcrafted bench bore a simple inscription: Jacob and Eleanor Thompson. They taught us to grow more than crops. This quiet corner of the property became my refuge for reflection and remembrance. Personal life also blossomed anew. At a sustainable agriculture conference, I met Laura, an environmental educator whose passion for connecting children with nature matched my own vision for the farm. Our relationship developed slowly, built on shared values and mutual respect. When she began helping with youth programs at the farm, her presence added new dimensions to what the property could become. The most profound lesson emerged gradually: family extends beyond blood. The neighbors who stood by me during the conflict, the community that supported my vision, the young people who embraced learning at the farm, even Benjamin, who fought for justice alongside me, all became a chosen family, bound by deeper connections than mere genetics. My grandfather once told me, "The true measure of wealth is not what you have, but what you give." Through the painful journey of betrayal and legal battles, I discovered the truth in his words. By preserving the farm and expanding its purpose, I was giving something meaningful to the community and future generations. This was the legacy my grandparents had entrusted to me, and honoring it brought deeper satisfaction than any material inheritance alone. The farmhouse, that caused so much conflict, became a place of healing and growth, not just for me, but for many others. The property that my parents had viewed as merely a financial asset had transformed into a living testament to values that transcended monetary worth. Standing in fields my grandfather had taught me to tend, watching sunset colors paint the horizon in hues no developer's dollars could purchase, I found peace in choosing integrity over avoidance, purpose over profit, and principle over momentary peace. The path had been painful but necessary, leading to a place of authenticity and meaning I might never have discovered otherwise. Sometimes the family you choose proves stronger than the family you're born into, and sometimes standing your ground against injustice becomes the greatest gift you can give yourself. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of fighting for what's right resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. Thanks for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your own values, even when it isn't easy.